Now, I'll see if this, do I need the microphone? Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah.
Can you hear me at the back okay? Cool, right, I'll do without that if I can. Yes, thank you very much, Robin. It's really nice to be here tonight to talk through ferries near and far. Like Robin's just already mentioned a little bit about me. You can see there where Catesbridge is on the map of Northern Ireland. If you watch the BBC News quite regularly, you'll see Catesbridge on the news because it's always the coldest part of Northern Ireland, and if not, one of the coldest parts in Britain and, well, the UK in general. Catesbridge, it's about 30 minutes from the sea and about 40 minutes from Belfast as well. So nice and close. You can see there in the picture as well, in the middle at the top, is Narrowwater Castle. Unfortunately become famous in 1979 when there was 18 mostly paratroopers that were murdered by a terrorist bomb that was detonated from just on the other side of the loch. You can just about see it on the right hand side of the picture as well. So yeah, come famous for that. But my family side my dad's side come from about a mile away from there. In fact, my granda was out in his garden that day when the explosion happened, and a piece of shrapnel over a mile landed just a few feet away from him. That was his indication because he actually worked in the police force at the time. He went down to check what was going on because he had heard it as well. Worm Point itself is famous for the sea truck ferries that go in and out of it now as well. So this is a drone picture I've taken of Sea Truck Performance sitting in Worm Point as well. Taken around May last year, the day the Waverley was in, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. Two pictures of me, one back in my seafaring days with P&O Ferries, and more laterally, that one was taken a few months ago, sitting in the flight deck of an A320 aircraft flying back from Nice to Edinburgh for EasyJet. So actually what I do is now I'm a training instructor for EasyJet, so I train the cabin crew and pilots throughout Europe. Spend most of my life down in London Gatwick, where I was last night, panicking to try and get this presentation finished in time and hoping there wasn't any cancellations for the weather down there. But yeah, that's pretty much me. One of the first things that happened then with the HSS, as Robin said, the HSS was probably one of the catalysts for me wanting to work at sea. One of the first things that happened was, you can see in the picture here on the bottom right, a picture of me with Captain John Hamley Jones from the Stena Explorer, which was the first HSS, and it started service between Holyhead and Dunleary, just south of Dublin itself. So Stena Line brought their training simulator to the Holiday World exhibition. If anyone remembers Holiday World, does it even still happen now? I'm not sure. So Holiday World used to take place across various parts of the UK and major cities. So 2004, they come to Belfast with their training simulator, and that was one of the key things that they brought to it. So I, of course, when I seen this on the news, I said, badgered Mum and Dad, I want to get to the Holiday World exhibition. We usually went anyway, but I wanted to be there on Friday for an opening. Got ourselves down there, queued up to behind David Dickinson from Bargain Hunt back in the day. He was the celebrity guest that was opening the event, and he got first shot on the HSS simulator. Needless to say, he was better off on TV than he is on a ship. The idea was that you navigated down into Belfast, and if anyone's been on the HSS, where they used to sail from, down in the sort of the bottom of the port, opposite now where the Titanic Centre is built. So navigate down in there, turn around in the turning circle, and back onto the berth. That was the idea of the simulator. So it should take no more than 10 minutes per person. Crashed it. Up comes me next, and first of all, a battle with the Stena Line staff because of my age. They didn't want to let me onto it. Needless to say, after a little bit of gentle persuasion, they let me go and do it. And the Belfast Telegraph then wrote the story, as you can see here as well. So it was the national news the next day. Still got that certificate, picture taken of it just a few days ago. And ironically, I got to sail them with Captain John Hamley Jones later on, which he didn't remember me, surprisingly, from that age. But yeah, the fast ferry era, I would say, was probably what inspired me to want to go to sea. It wasn't the ships that were on there sort of previously. It was a new generation that was coming out. You had the Stenny HSS, started around 1996 on the North Channel route between Stranraer and Belfast. You had at that time, the first fast craft that P&O had was the Jetliner, and it was 1996 to 2000. It sailed. Not great reports on the Jetliner. I remember being on it a few times. I loved it, but majority of people spent most of the crossing not well, let's just say. Did tend to move about a lot more than any of the catamarans that there was. So the Jetliner was gone and brought in the Superstar Express, which came up from the Portsmouth area. It was a sort of second-hand vessel to P&O Irish Sea, as it was then, before they amalgamated into one company as P&O Ferries. So P&O Irish Sea then took over the Superstar Express. It was in 2000 to 2004, so about 4 years on the North Channel. It was a 1 hour crossing from Larne to Cairnryan, and there was nothing better than that. No, 1 hour for customers to get from A to B was absolutely perfect. The perfect way to sort of combat, ironically, who I'm working for now, the airline industry and the low-cost airline industry as well. The Superstar Express didn't last very long either. 2004, it disappeared, and roughly 2005, in come the Express. As you can see in the top left there, the Express is arriving into Larne. That was in its last season, which was the 2015 season, where they sailed. So my time with P&O Ferries, they sailed between Larne to Cairnryan. So they did a trip to Troon in the morning, rotation to Troon from Larne in the morning, back out to Cairnryan around lunchtime, and back to Larne, and then an evening sailing back to Troon, and return to Larne in the evening around sort of 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. Excellent for football fans, especially going to Glasgow. No matter what allegiance they had, it was perfect for them. We loved it as well because it saved that drive down the A77, which was brilliant at the time as well. But yeah, unfortunately, the service came to an end in 2015. I didn't get the chance to put it into the presentation, but I sailed on the last crossing with P&O on the Express as a customer. We went out in the morning, just did a day trip actually, went over from Larne to Cairnryan on one of the Causeway or Highlander, and drove up to Troon. And my idea was I was going to take some photos of the Express arriving for the last time, and then pictures from on board for departure, and the plan was to be on the bridge as well. Unfortunately, the Express arrived, and all you could hear was the Express. You couldn't see a thing, thick fog. We were actually panicking in case the ship didn't even get in to Troon. They did make it into Troon, and we made it back out again, and within sort of about 10 seconds of us leaving the berth, all we seen was the crowd of the ground staff at the port staff at Troon waving us off, and within about 10 seconds they disappeared into the mist. So it was quite sad sort of situation. It was Captain Val Plant was the master on that night, and I remember Val. I presented Val a picture of the Express at speed just as it was about to exit Loch Ryan, just as a surprise for him on that night. Didn't get up to the bridge due to the low visibility, but I used to love the Larne to Troon crossing. Has anyone done Larne to Troon? Yeah, used to love it because you used to get quite close to Ailsa Craig, which was great. It was one of the unique sort of opportunities, other than doing your own private trip or the Waverley, to get up close to Ailsa Craig as well. So it was good on that one. Here's me with my dad. I can't remember whether this was the Jetliner bridge or the Superstar Express bridge. It was one or the other. I've certainly been on both. I know that the top picture, a young me on the Superstar Express, standing there, proud as anything with a picture, and up on the bridge as well of the Jetliner. I think it was a Jetliner. So the Stena Voyager was the HSS, the one of the three HSS 1500 craft. There was a smaller HSS 900 that was built by Stena as well. So this was the first or the second one in the series. It started off its life and stayed most of its time on the Belfast to Stranraer route. one of the things that's really notorious about these ships was, and this was the really sort of interesting thing, if anyone hadn't seen them, is the beam. They were huge, absolutely huge. They were coming down the lock, nothing like it at all. But yeah, so this was it at the new Stena Line port at Victoria Terminal in Belfast, prior to the ship was taken for scrap as well. The reason why I put most of this in here is, and apologies, some of the pictures aren't that great. I'm going to blame my dad for that, but he did the photography that day. But I got a tour of the HSS, so we asked Stena Line after the simulator. They invited us then for a tour of the vessel while it was in service. So it was a captain, it was First Officer Brian McJury, who was tasked for the day simply to come on board and do a round trip to give us the experience of a tour around the vessel. So we were pretty much access all areas down in the engine rooms on both hulls, and then from the vehicle decks right up through onto the bridge and walking along the roof itself. The unique thing about the HSS was no ropes were required. So you can see in the top right hand picture is a little bit of the link span, sort of the claws of the link span, if you want to say. So the ship come in, backed into Stranraer as it was here. You can see the railway station in the first picture. Backed into Stranraer, and it was clamped onto the link span. It was dropped onto the back of the ship, and 4 lanes of traffic, 2 off, 2 on, and you did a massive U shape on board. 2 vehicle decks that all the cars were taken up on, a huge ramp, and it was quite funny actually watching some of the people trying to get up this ramp. It was quite intimidating at the time to do so. But yeah, that's some of the pictures of that. The bridge of the HSS, so very much, I would say, very like an aircraft in style. These fast craft, the navigator and the captain himself both sat up on the bridge, and to the back of the bridge was the engine control room. So chief engineer would have stayed on the bridge as well, monitor on technical systems from there. But yeah, you can see everything was right to hand. They didn't have to leave their seats at all. This was Captain Chris Keane on the left-hand seat on this one. That took us down, going down Loch Ryan. You can just see Cairn Point Lighthouse through the bridge windows there. Not a great day, unfortunately, weather-wise. A few of the unique things about the HSS. So this was us walking along the roof. So all stores were completed via containers that were loaded onto the ship via crane, which ran down the centre of the roof of the ship, basically. Back right down to lifted up the container. One was dropped into behind the shop, and the other one would have been dropped into the galley. So there was no need for crew to be carrying loads of stores around. It was absolutely a fantastic idea. The nickname the HSS was given, does anyone know? Related to aviation? Concorde of the Seas. So it was ahead of its time, and just like Concorde, unfortunately, it was too ahead of its time. So yeah, you can see the bottom right here is the engine control room station for the HSS, up on the bridge on there as well. And you can just see, I think it's European Causeway that was just making its way down ahead of us at Cairn Point, down towards Cairn Ryan Port as well. Down one of the hulls then, we were down into the engine room spaces, so 2 gas turbines on each side. If our memory serves me right, it was 2 747 style jet engines and 2 stealth bomber jet engines that powered on both sides of the vessel as well. A speed of 40 knots in service, which was fantastic as well. When the ship first entered service, it was a 40 knot speed pretty much the entire route, until a few incidents happened along the shores of Loch Ryan and the shore of Belfast Loch as well, with both the HSS and the Seacat at the time, where both operators then were placed with speed restrictions up the loch as well. The unique thing about the HSS was it lifted the nose as the speed increased. So if anyone's familiar with Loch Ryan, just past where Stena Line's new port is at Loch Ryan Port, they started to increase the speed going through Forbes Shoal, and you would have seen the nose of the bow of the HSS lift up into the water and the stern sink as the power was applied as well, and that's when the wake really started to increase as well. That's myself on the roof with the navigating officer that day that took us around, Brian McJury. Ironically, he became the harbour master at Worm Point, so such a small world after that. But yeah, presented me with that picture, which is still in my bedroom to this day. It was taken down off the bulkhead on the bridge of the Voyager that day and handed to me. The other funny sort of story from this as well is not that I ever watched it, but one of the captains on the HSS, the Stena Voyager, was Captain Kirk. Yeah, so George Kirk used to take us back and forth from Scotland to Northern Ireland and vice versa all the time, and he used to make reference to that sometimes in the PAs as well, Captain George Kirk. This is the Stena Voyager just passing the Loch Ryan port construction site. That was must have been around 2010, I reckon, because the port was operational from November 2011. So this was sort of towards, unfortunately, the end of the HSS era on the North Channel. Again, an aluminium ship. It was no signs of rust on there at all. Absolutely fantastic piece of machinery to this day. 1,500 passenger capacity, I believe, on there as well. We used to, if anyone wasn't on it, used to walk around it. It was like a racing circuit, basically, the way you walked around the vessel. Huge window at the front where you could sit on like a big bar at the front and just sit and watch the world go by as well at 40 knots. They used to, the only problem with this was there was no sort of quiet space when you had things like people like the football fans on. You take 1,000 football fans heading to Glasgow for the day, and it wasn't pleasant, so they used to close off the forward end of the vessel. Security used to stop anyone with a football shirt got in there to try and make it a bit more pleasant for everyone else. One story from that as well. So we did a trip from Stranraer one night, and it was George Kirk was the captain. We left Stranraer and he warned us. It was a force 10 that was blowing on the North Channel on a fast craft. He recommended that we all stay seated. Wasn't going to be pleasant. We got out into the North Channel, left Loch Ryan, shelter at Loch Ryan, out into the North Channel. We weather routed towards the Antrim coast, away up north of Larne first before coming down. We were in the Globetrotter restaurant as it was then, myself, the family, and family friends that were with us for a day trip shopping. We used to go to Dumfries for the day, and it was me that used to badger the family to get a trip on the ferry back in the day. So yeah, we were in the Globetrotter restaurant. We were the only family in the restaurant. Everyone else was sitting green. There was actually football fans on that night as well, travelling back. And let's just say their faces were starting to match the colour of the shirts on the night. So yeah, it wasn't pleasant. So much so that the Stena Line staff kept coming and giving us more and more food. And we were like, we haven't ordered this. No, just take it. Went to pay the bill and they charged us only something like £10 for 7 people. And we were like, this is not right. And they said, no, we've so much food, we're wasting it. We want to just give it to you. So the advice we got years ago was, if you're going to sea on a rough day, take a big meal. And we did so, and none of us were sick at all, including my mum, who is not the best traveller by sea. Familiar vessel, was just talking about it before we started, the Stena Caledonia. This picture was taken just passing Cairnryan at the time, so this must have been around 2010. So after the vessel had been refitted with the duck wings at the stern, so the sponsons that were fitted to the stern for stability purposes, the ship was rebuilt for that. Stena Line at the time ran the Stena Caledonia alongside the HSS. That was the two vessel service they used to run, and the Stena Caledonia primarily just picked up the freight, going back and forth, and the Voyager took most of the passenger traffic that was travelling at the time. So yeah, Stena Caledonia. I did my work experience at school, so it must have been around, I'm guessing this was around 2006, I would say. Got the contacted Stenline again and asked them, can I come on board and do some work experience on the Voyager? They said unfortunately not. However, it was Captain Murray Patterson of the Stena Caledonia, and he got me on board for 2 days, one night on board there. So you can see me with a uniform on the bridge wing, on the starboard bridge wing, just at Stranraer. Typical Scottish weather, starting to rain for departure. The vessel was starting to look a bit tired then as well. The exposed bridge wings, which crew nowadays would absolutely detest with the weather that we get in this part of the world. Even the lifeboats as well, still exposed lifeboats compared to what we would see nowadays as well. But yeah, got a full tour of the vessel and spent most of my time on the bridge as well. For health and safety, they wouldn't let me down onto the vehicle decks during cargo operations. So some pictures, of the bridge of the Caledonia as well. So yeah, and the classic two funnels where we were sat. We were just either leaving or just arriving into the berth of Belfast at the time on that one as well. And you can see Stranraer Port in its heyday with all the trailers there in the bottom left-hand corner. Unfortunately, a sorry sight now when you see it. Just a waste ground now at the moment. Some more pictures of the Caledonia. So you've got the engines themselves, the engine control room, and the vehicle deck. One of the vehicle decks on board, and you've also got some footage of the refueling process taking place there in Belfast as well. All done by road tanker in those days, before the bunker vessel started coming to Northern Ireland each week. Another one of the HSSs then, the first one, like I mentioned earlier on, the Stena Explorer, sailed between Dún Laoghaire and Holyhead. So I did one trip on the Stena Explorer, actually when I was working for Stena Line. Went down there just before the vessel finished. So this was around, there'd been rumours for a long time that the vessel was going to be pulled from service. So we went down there around 2012, 2013 for a trip down there. So it's actually arriving into Dún Laoghaire, and you can see her on the berth in Holyhead itself in the inner harbour. Some pictures on board the vessel then. So this is the Explorer, but the Voyager and the Explorer quite similar. The one thing that was quite unique to these vessels at the time, certainly the Voyager, was when she first came into service, there was a McDonald's on board. So it was the first known McDonald's at sea as well, certainly in the UK. There was a McDonald's on board, but you can see sort of the way the passenger flow around the accommodation on it. A few more images then. So the jets at the rear, so the water jets you can see there. The great thing about these vessels as well was there was camera systems right around the vessel for manoeuvring into port as well. So you can actually see in the top left hand picture, deliberately took that to show the camera down onto the jets, and that's on the starboard side jets there. Loved that sight that you used to see in the bottom left of the jet engines and the wake that we were putting out the back as well. And the lifeboats, the rescue boat inside the one of the funnels of the vessel as well. And the third one in the series, and not ironically the first one to go out of service, was Stena Discovery. This is her seen laid up at the ship repair quay in Belfast prior to being sold to Venezuela for service out there, which I'm not sure on what actually happened, whether she actually made it into service or not. But yeah, so that's the Stena Discovery. All three of these vessels did make an appearance on the Belfast to Stranraer route because of the significance of the route to Stena Line. and the amount of freight and customers they carried. They always maintained the HSS service throughout their career. So whenever one went into dry dock, and they were always dry docked in Holland and Wolff in Belfast with special what's the special stands basically that the vessel was put on in Belfast, which only disappeared a few years ago from the port. They were still down at one of the dry docks there in Holland and Wolff. But yeah, so that is the HSS and sort of what got me into the shipping industry. In 2009 then, I went to the Nautical College in Glasgow and studied my cadetship through Clyde Marine Training and sponsored by P&O Ferries. So the first vessel that I then, after my 6-month college phase here in Glasgow, the first vessel I went to operate on as cadet was on the Pride of Bilbao, Portsmouth to Bilbao. So I believe, from memory, it was about a 36-hour crossing to Bilbao, longest sea route I'd ever been on, and quite an eye-opener, because this picture on the bottom left was taken by the Spanish media inside the port of Bilbao at Santurce, inside the port, before we'd even left the harbour limits. And so the first crossing I arrived down, so I flew from Belfast to Southampton with Flybe, which is an experience and a half. Got to Southampton, and at the age of 19, never been away from home on my own, had to try and make my way from Southampton Airport to Portsmouth Harbour to board the vessel. So here's me with my big case for a 3-week trip away, and trying to make my way, asking locals for directions, and no one seemed to have a clue where to direct me to from Eastleigh Station. Got to Portsmouth and arrived at Portsmouth Continental Port, into the terminal, and there was a huge queue of passengers queued around the P&O desk. I was like, what's going on here? So I listened in, and what they were doing was the P&O staff were handing out letters to the customers, and they were discouraging people from travelling, which I thought, what's going on? So listened in, got a letter as a passenger, and it said on the letter basically that the ship's master was going to sail, however expected a potentially 2 to 3 day delay on arrival into Bilbao. So if you didn't wish to travel, please don't travel, basically, was alternative options available to you. So I'm not sure how many people took up that offer and didn't go. I hadn't a choice. I had to board the ship, got through security onto the vessel, and met the chief officer, who was my boss for that trip. Got up the next morning as we sailed down through the English Channel and headed towards Ushant, which is the point where you head towards Biscay. And it was starting to get rough at this point. It was starting to blow force 9, 10 at this point. And as we headed down towards the north end of the bay, it started to blow 11 into Hurricane 12. So at that point, the master decided we're heading into the Atlantic to try and get around this. So it was Cyclone Cynthia, it was, that hit mainland Europe. And there was people killed in France, I believe, with it. So we headed out, weather routed into the Atlantic, and to cut the long story short, it was the only time I've ever felt seasick, but I think it was quite justified in force 12. And the master, who Scottish gentleman, Captain McFadden, was reported not to have left the bridge for a 24-hour period at one point. He was worried about the Atlantic pins on the visor. So if anyone has any sort of experience of what happened to Estonia, the Atlantic pins failed on the visor, and the visor got taken off, and the ship went down, unfortunately. But yeah, so he was worried about that. But we made it to Bilbao and got in, and this was us going back out again to head back to Portsmouth. Yeah, dry dock picture there as well of the ship. It was owned by Irish Continental Group. It wasn't owned by P&O Ferries themselves. It was only on charter to us. So the vessel wasn't in the greatest of shape, because actually she was taken out of service in 2010 anyway. P&O closed the route. as P&O like to do. They like to see the company shrink in size. Management decided Portsmouth wasn't no longer a viable option for them. It was the last ship and the last route in and out of the old P&O Portsmouth empire as it was. So yeah, the ship wasn't in the best of state towards the end, unfortunately. Bottom right picture is us on our berth in Bilbao, and the top there you can see the GNEW bunkering us in Portsmouth before we headed out as well. Most of my time on this ship was spent doing maintenance as a cadet, so following the ABs around the ship and doing the maintenance tasks on board, learning from the bottom up. One of the most interesting tasks, and probably the most dangerous task, was the top left-hand picture. That's actually the bow visor at the top. So we're right at the bow of the ship here. So we climbed down into the visor. They opened the pins and lifted it up, cracked it open for us to grease the seals around it. So yeah, interesting task. You can see one of the stabilizer fins. You can also see the propellers there as well in the dry dock. And the bulbous bow is pictured there, and you can see where the anchor chain has rubbed some of the paint off there as well, wore some of our paint away. The picture I put in the middle there at the bottom is the main vehicle deck, and the main deck itself was separated by, if I remember, it was 4 alubar doors. So once each section of the vehicle deck was full, we closed the doors, and we remember taking a customer down to find something in their car at one point during one of the crossings, and they asked the question, "Oh, you've closed the doors, why is this?" So I explained to them, obviously, for ship safety, we have to close the doors. We want to divide the ship into 6 compartments on the vehicle deck. It's too dangerous to have any water across the entire deck, so we want to make it 6 watertight compartments. And they said, "Well, why is there a gap at the top of the door?" And I says, "Needn't worry about that, because if the water gets that high, we'll not be here." So yeah, they couldn't understand why there was still a gap at the top of the doors. And I was like, "Trust me, if there's even a centimetre of water across this entire deck, we're in trouble." But yeah, they weren't getting it. Coming through the English Channel, we rendezvoused with the Royal Navy, and they did some helicopter operations with us as well. So it was really interesting. 2 trips I did on the Bilbao. I'm not sure whether this was trip 1 or 2, but yeah, they come alongside us and they'd winch people down, winch people up again, and that. This is where I got my steering ticket on the bridge of the Bilbao. Perfect place. You're not going to hit much in the Bay of Biscay learning to steer, and you can blame the swells in Biscay for any issues with it as well. But yeah, so that was the Pride of Bilbao days. One of the most interesting trips I did was during the ash cloud. So when Eyjafjallajökull, whatever it was called, decided to erupt in Iceland, we were down in Bilbao, and we had thousands of customers coming on board as foot passenger. They'd managed to get themselves into European airports and got themselves to any sea route possible to get back to the UK. I remember talking to one family of 5, and they had paid over £6,500 just to get home from Cuba. I'll never forget that. As a complete ship's company, we helped these people. So it was approximately 100 steps up the gangway to get on board, and they had all their luggage with them. So as a ship's company, from the master right down to us as cadets and all the crew, as many of us as possible were down, and we were doing as many trips up that gangway as we could. I certainly wasn't the weight I am now by doing that. But yeah, it would be quite a team. And as we got the last customer on, and as we were starting to come up the gangway, there was hundreds of people lined out on deck giving us a round of applause. I'm really surprised. I was surprised at the reaction they give us, because P&O were charging them hundreds just to sleep on the deck in the cinema to get home. They did get a free blanket, I believe, for that. Yeah, a couple more photos of the Bilbao. You can see some of the rust there on the anchor windlass, and some of the roller leads and fair leads and stuff as well. But yeah, one of the interesting things about Bay of Biscay was the wildlife, and you can see the dolphins I've captured on the bow. of the Pride of Bilbao. We had a wildlife officer on board, and the other thing we used to do for one of the universities in England, we used to trail this like a fishing boat, basically trawling this thing behind us through the bay, and they used to collect it and give us a new one to do samples of what we were picking up as well. So this was the 4th ship that I was on. So I've jumped to the 4th ship at the minute, and that was the European Endeavour, built as the midnight merchant for Norfolk Line between Dover and Calais. So I sailed with P&O as the European Endeavour. We sailed between Dublin and Liverpool, which was about an 8-hour crossing. The sad thing is the Dublin-Liverpool route ceases next week. So again, P&O management, having a vision for the future. They've decided that route is not viable anymore, so the Norbank and the Norbay that runs their operation at the minute is going. We were the 3rd ship on the route, so we used to do a 3 p.m. roughly rotation from Dublin and a 3:30 a.m. or 3 a.m. rotation from Liverpool back to Dublin. The really interesting thing as a cadet on this ship was that we used to lock in and lock out of Liverpool docks. So you used to be in and out of the lock every day. So it was really interesting from a cadet perspective to get the opportunity to do that, especially on short sea routes. Most of the time I was at sea, the 2nd ship I was on was the European Causeway, as you can see here, leaving Larne for Cairn Ryan. So the European Causeway was built in 2000, built specifically for the Larne Cairn Ryan service. To replace the old Pride of Rathlin. So the vessel came into service in August 2000, if I remember rightly, and it was built in Japan by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. So I used to joke about the Mitsubishi on the North Channel. But yeah, really reliable ship. It has sailed on only one route since its entry into service in 2000. And the senior master is actually a good friend of mine, Captain Paul Roach as well. Even to this day, still keep in contact. Although we did sail together on the European Highlander, which is the slightly larger, I say slightly larger, 3 meters larger sister ship of the Causeway as well. So some of the stats there, I'll let you look on the screen for it. Some of the other interesting stats there is, though, for the Causeway, which is not on the screen. So does anyone have any idea, if I say that it's just only ever been on service on one route since 2000, how many nautical miles do you think the vessel has sailed as of November 30th, 2023?
No idea.
What was that, sorry?
500,000.
500,000. So it's 1.5 and more million nautical miles. So if I remember what Paul had sent me, he said it was 1.577 million nautical miles. The vessel, I'll come to that in a second actually, it was 10,800 miles nautical miles from Japan back to Larne in 2000. And the captain at the time, Captain Jim McMullen, brought the vessel back to Larne Port. 410 passenger capacity and 1,750 metres of freight space as well. Some images from the bridge of the Causeway. This was us coming into Larne. So quite a modern bridge in comparison to the likes of Stena Caledonia. And even to this day, still weathered most of the technical advances there's been of it. Myself again on the bridge of the Causeway. Interesting, I don't have a picture of it, but the Japanese gifted the ship a doll, which is in a box, just on the port side of the bridge. They gifted this doll. It's a superstitious thing in Japan, where this doll has sailed with the ship ever since, in this box ever since it was brought into service in 2000. So the cargo operations on board the Causeway, 3 vehicle decks. Most people are not aware that there's 3 vehicle decks. So deck 1 is a lower hold. I can't remember the exact figures, but it holds just over 10 trailers, freight trailers. You can see how tight it is getting back in the trailers down in there as well. So they lowered overnight operations. You would load the lower hold, close that down, and then deck 2 could be loaded on top as well. Brum was on board at one point. I managed to get a picture of it as well. And the other thing was the ship featured in a French film called Je n'oublie pas, which I can't remember what it means. It's something about memory. Yeah, the vessel was featured in that. So I was actually the safety officer that took the film crew around this French actress, which I'm not going to say her name because it doesn't come out right in my accent. But yeah. Cool, a few more pictures as well. So most of what P&O carry, and even to this day, is mostly freight. Stena Line carry over 1,500 passengers per crossing, potentially. P&O have got a 410 passenger capacity. I still prefer to travel P&O for numerous reasons. One being it is quieter, and secondly, to me, it's still a proper ship. It's a freight, still a freight Ro-Pax vessel as well. One of the huge things that they carry a lot of is cars back and forth. So I've noticed a lot of Northern Ireland registered cars now being sold by companies like Arnold Clark here in Scotland. I can't understand this. Scottish cars are going to Northern Ireland for sale. Northern Irish cars are coming to Scotland. There's obviously some sort of dodge movement going on there when it comes to sort of taxes and stuff as well. Legal, but some sort of shady way of doing it. Refueling the vessel. Again, road tankers used to do it when I first started with P&O. This is the European causeway actually in the left-hand picture. The right-hand pictures then of the Kiewit, the bunker tanker, is leaving the European Highlander, sister vessel of it. All done by them now. So the average bunker load is 210 tonnes per week per vessel. Of very low sulfur fuel. One of the things that I did get some information on is the vessel consumes about 5.5 tonnes per 33 nautical miles of a leg back and forth across the North Channel. So the Kiewit comes once a week to Larne to bunker both vessels. Some refit pictures then that were sent to me. They're not my pictures, these ones. So the vessel has been to 3 trips to Falmouth, 7 trips to Birkenhead, and 11 trips to Belfast since it was built in the year 2000. So the total distance of those trips was 15,000 nautical miles for those refit periods. Which leaves then that the European causeway has sailed 1.56 million nautical miles across the North Channel, which equates to approximately 47,330 crossings. It's a lot of crossings. They changed the propellers back in a refit a few years ago, and that's given them a 15% fuel efficiency as well. And this is one of the 4 engines down in the engine space on board as well. Some drone footage I've taken of the causeway. I've got about 3,000 photos of this vessel, every possible angle, every possible part of the vessel you could be in at all. I've got a close affinity to the causeway, being the second ship I was on, the first ship on my home route. The senior master actually gifted me, and anyone's welcome to see it afterwards, a coin that was made for the ship's company in 2021. Due to the COVID pandemic, it was done a year late. But 21 years of service, so every single one of the ship's company got a coin, and he gifted me one as well, which was very generous of him as well, because I've done a lot of photography for him in the past. The vessel arriving into Larne and departing, arriving at Cairnryan as well. And a view from the Monkey Island. P&O hit the headlines back in, if I remember, it was March 2022. They hit the headlines, obviously, as most people will probably know, for the way they made their seafarers for the UK redundant and changed all the contracts. They then hit the headlines on the North Channel a few weeks later after the ship had re-entered service. And guess who was on board as a passenger when it happened? So these were the headlines. Cast the Chancers adrift, P&O SOS, ban these problem ships from the sea. So believe it or not, we got involved in the live rescue operation, although there was no danger to anyone on board. I arrived back into Larne Port to the BBC and ITV media there, wanting to interview me. And my interview never made the TV because I was the honest one that said that no one felt any danger at any time. Everyone else was coming off panicking, thought their lives were at risk, but no. I was loving it. I got over 2,000 photos that day. I even got asked, did I not put the drone up? And I was like, well, there's a helicopter flying around from Prestwick. I don't think so. So basically, a few nautical miles off Larne, the vessel blacked out. The reason for it, I'm not going to say because I don't know for definite. There has been rumour for the reason why, but I don't know the definite reason. The first ship to arrive on scene to assist was the Queen Victoria. And she stayed off standby in case it was needed. The weather was beautiful, as you can see from the photos. We were drifting towards East Maiden Light off Larne at the time, which was probably the biggest concern. However, with the prevailing winds and the sea conditions, there was no overall concern. Some staff from P&O were actually transferred by the Larne lifeboat onto the vessel to help assist as well. But yeah, so got some fantastic photos of the Queen Victoria that day. And the bottom left-hand picture is the old Maiden's derelict lighthouse off Larne as well. So the lifeboats escorted us back into port. The reason why I showed this picture is, and apologies, some of my watermarks are still on these because I had issues finding the originals. I've had to watermark my photos for people for stealing them. In fact, actually, companies stealing them as well. So the European Causeway sister ship, the Highlander, together in Larne. So this is the Highlander. This was just after these pictures of the lifeboat doing drills was just after the new ship's crew were brought on board. So there was a crew on standby in Cairnryan the morning that the redundancies took place, and they were brought on board. The good news is, though, from a seafarer's point of view, almost all of the friends that I had that worked for P&O are still working for them again under new contracts, and they're more than happy to be back again, despite what happened to them at the time. But yeah, as you can see the Highlander, some pictures of on board as well. These were the freight driver's lounge, where they put these little bunks in for them to sleep for the 2-hour crossing back to Larne. World Duty Free is now in partnership with P&O and runs a shop on board, and everyone loves a picture of a ship with Ailsa Craig in the background. Certainly I do anyway. Over 1,000, I would say, pictures of ships with Ailsa Craig in the background. Any opportunity at all to do so. And just a few more. The Causeway, or the Highlander, sorry, coming in towards Loch Ryan and passing Corswell Point, heading for Malurboy at the entrance to Loch Ryan. The Mitsubishis, though, there was 3 of them in total. So the bottom left-hand one, the ugly duckling as it looks like there, because it's got no livery at the time, was the Stena Nordica, built as a European ambassador for the Dublin to Mostyn route, which never really got off the ground properly. P&O sold the vessel to, it was the 3rd vessel in the fleet in the series. They sold the vessel to Stena Line, which I think was, in my opinion, not a great move, because it's been one of Stena Line's most versatile vessels over the years. It's now in operation between Rosslare and Fishguard, replacing the Stena Europe. The Waverley then, in Northern Ireland, is another thing that I thought I would talk about tonight. So the day the Waverley come to Northern Ireland, unfortunately I couldn't get a ticket for it. It was all sold out. So I couldn't get a ticket, but I did one thing better, and that was I followed the ship right round Carlingford Loch and round as much as possible, drone videos and footage as much as possible as well. So my dad was on the camera duty, I was on the drone duty. So this is passing inbound from the Holbeline Lighthouse at Cranfield, where I used to holiday quite a bit as well. So about 30 minutes from my mum and dad's house. A few more images then of the ship coming through. So passing Holbeline on the way in with the pilot boat escorting the vessel in, arriving into Worm Point itself for the first time, and the tugboat there as well to assist. And then the middle picture at the bottom is the vessel going out full for the cruise, evening cruise up Carlingford Loch towards Kilkeel as well. The Mourne Mountains, so that's the site that I look out into from my mum and dad's house on the opposite side of the mountains every day. Absolutely stunning part of the world, just like the west coast of Scotland, in my opinion. So yeah, Waverley fitted in right nicely there. This picture was taken from the shore side of, so I was in the Republic of Ireland, taking these pictures back into Northern Ireland. The vessel just off Kilkeel, which is one of the major fishing ports in the part of that world, in our part of the world. So on the day, what the vessel did was, for anyone that isn't aware, left Worm Point, sailed up Carningford Loch, close to Greenore, out round Cranfield Point and up to Kilkeel, where the vessel turned around near Kilkeel and headed back down towards Worm Point again. I had to take the ferry, which is between Greenore and Greencastle, to be able to do all the footage that we did, and we just made the ferry. It was the last one of the night as well, so got across on the scenic Carningford ferry, the Ashley and Gabriel, and that was the ship arriving back into Worm Point after a successful cruise. And another one over in Worm Point itself. A few more of the Waverley I've taken over the years. You'll all recognise the bottom right hand corner, I'm sure. One of my favourite parts to fly the drone, back and forth following the Loch Dunvegan, and always nice to see the Waverley coming through. I did get the Waverley going through the Tower Bridge in London, and this was her passing one of the Sea Truck vessels, Sea Truck Performance, in Carningford Loch. The vessel was heading out towards Heysham with its evening load. Some North Channel visitors, I appreciate the time as well, so some of the North Channel visitors over the years, I'll go through really quickly, but European Seaway was one of the visitors that's made it to the North Channel prior to being sold to South America. P&O brought the vessel up from Dover to cover the North Channel refit period, so passing Corswell Lighthouse, and on this passing Cairn Point Lighthouse at Cairnryan as well. I loved the vessel, thought it was a brilliant freight ship, and was probably the most successful refit cover that P&O's had in my time as well. Again, one in Loch Ryan, just departing Larne, doing a starboard swing out of Larne, and passing Corswell Point with Ailsa Craig in the background. And a few onboard photos, including the bridge. And you can see the Causeway or Highlander passing by as well, about a nautical mile apart. Norbank, another vessel that's made it to the North Channel for refit cover. Not as successful, these vessels, I would say, because one, they've got no lift on board, which is not great. Absolutely shocking that they've no lift on board, and the interior, as you can see, is still very, I would say, 1980s vessel inside. Not any updates at all to it. So some more pictures there of the Norbank. Everyone loves a picture of a spur propeller as well. You can see the rust on the vessel. Wasn't in the best of state as well at one point when she was up. Norbay. Ironically, top and bottom look completely different. Norbay when it's repainted and Norbay when it's needing painted. Again, up on the Monkey Island, looking down, got a full tour of the vessel as well around it when it was up here during refit cover. Passing through the Maidens, just off Larne, I would say probably around where our Cullen Point was, as well at the Hunter Boys. And a few more of the Norbay and Norbank. Stena Nordica, which I mentioned earlier on, the third Mitsubishi that P&O built, and now in the red, white and blue of Stena. Very Swedish style on board now. Stena has completely revamped these vessels compared to what they were in the P&O days. This vessel is completely different, very, very much more modern on board, as much passenger sort of comfort, and P&O is very basic, no frill service, which I love. I'm not going to knock it at all, but these vessels are, the Stena vessels are much superior inside, accommodation wise. Refitted in Poland last year, prior to going into service. The E-Flexors, Stena E-Flexors as well, have all visited Loch Ryan at some point on the North Channel. So Stena Edda, Stena Estrid and Stena Embla have all visited the North Channel as well. Again, brilliant ships, huge, wide, spacious accommodation on board, over 200 metres in length. These are the future, I would say, of the ferry industry. I find them quite boring because everything looks the same nowadays. There's no character to a vessel anymore. However, this unfortunately does look like it is going to be the future as well. And these are just random photos I've taken of Edda, Esther and Emba, all thrown together as well. The carpet's very questionable. But yeah. Passing Corswall Point, always a beautiful shot of any vessel passing Corswall as well. The North Channel today then, just to round it all off, so you've got Stena Superfast 7 and 8. I've actually got a canvas print of this picture for anyone that wants to have a look at it as well. So yeah, the two vessels only recently were both together at Loch Ryan Port due to the Stena Superfast 7 having a fire on board in the generator room. So she was out of service for repair and 8 was alongside in service. Causeway and Highlander for P&O Ferries at Larne, both together as well. So again, both operators operate ships that are pretty much identical. The Causeway and Highlander differ slightly. The Highlander's 3 metres longer, like I mentioned earlier. She's got 4 lifeboats instead of 2 due to no MES system on board. And she has an extra passenger lift as well, and those are the major differences. The other main difference is one's got blue decks, the other's got green decks. Stena Superfast 7 in the North Channel in more recent months. Highlander. Again, Superfast 7. The both operators were head to head with each other in Loch Ryan. The race to Corswall Point was always interesting, the race to Corswall, and still is to today. The Loch Ryan Navigation the Ferry Navigation Committee agreements are in force for that. So Corswall Point's our first radio call when we're heading down the loch. Malura Point at the top of the loch is the next radio point, and then from there on in, the agreement follows as well. Most of the time, ships stay to the western side of the loch. Certainly P&O stay to the western side of the loch. Stena sort of go straight down towards Forbes Shoal, which is just off Loch Ryan Port. Caught this just at the right moment, the rainbow at Corswall of European Highlander, and just a few more of Superfast as well. Yeah, I put these in here just as a chart of Loch Ryan. Brought these from both the Stena websites and Port websites and Port of Larne website, P&O as well, of the routing system. So you can see here, the western side of the lochs are the inbound route towards the safe water mark, the Fairway Buoy, and then down towards Cairn Point. Cairn Point was always interesting because the water's quite shallow there. I remember at points where we've had to slow right down because the vessel, as she comes into shallower water, starts to squat more if you're going too fast. So sinks down into the water further. So there was potential that you could get towards the bottom. There's only potentially half a metre of clearance at low tide. And that's it. Any questions anyone's got?
Why were the bars along the front of the bow in some of them?
Good point. Yep. So the Causeway and Highlander have got the famous cow catcher. See if we can get a picture of that. Yeah, you can kind of see it here. And you can see the reason why they've got the cow catcher. So the pads there's pads on the ramp, on the link span, and it's just basically to bring it up onto the link span. I remember being on watch on the bridge one night and heard this, in bad weather, heard this huge bang. Didn't know what it was. We knew there was nothing about that we had hit unless it was completely off radar and dark. We got to Larne and discovered that the cow catcher was missing. So we lost the cow catcher in the weather. Yeah. So I've never heard of it happening since, but yeah, it has happened. But yeah, it's a good question. Any others?
See the crewing thing, is that 2022 that happened? Yeah?
22, I think, yeah.
So you said some of your colleagues were back on board, so are they in a less favourable deal than they had before?
So my understanding, I've not asked a lot of questions on it, but my understanding is they only get paid for the days they're on board now, but they get paid obviously more favourably for those days. So actually, I think majority of people are quite happy in that they're getting paid pretty much the same. The only thing would be is things like pension, other terms that they would have had before. They don't have actually any travel rights anymore that we would have had. So yeah, there's lots of things sort of. I believe most of them are employed by agencies like Clyde Marine. Yeah. So yeah, certainly most of the officers are back. Taking the fact that some of them got huge redundancy payments and back to work the next day. I don't really see the logic in it in many respects, but the crewing system on the Causeway and Highlander is very much mostly any of the ratings on board, catering or deck and engine, are all either Spanish or mostly Latvian, and always have been since more or less since the Causeway and Highlander came into operation as well. So they weren't affected by it. It was only those on a UK or Jersey contract for it.
Do they stay aboard?
They stay on board for 2 months at a time and do 1 month at home. The officers do 2 on, 2 off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. Yeah. Any others? Thank you very much.
Very good, very good. Robert, thank you very much. Indeed, that was
No problem.
a visit to memory lane for me. As I said earlier, my wife is from Stranraer, and I was reminded there was one particular occasion I took my eldest son on a non-landing cruise to Larne, I think it was in those days, and he was wearing a Rangers top, and unfortunately we had chosen July the 13th, which was the day after the marches, and Graham came up to me about halfway through the journey and he said, "Dad, there's an awful lot of people, they're giving me money. What am I supposed to do about this?" Because they thought he'd been at the marches and they were saying, he said, "Do you enjoy the marches, wee man?" And Graham's going, "Marches?" So bizarre. But there we are. What a fascinating talk. And we saw in one of the pictures the Northwest Castle Hotel. And I can tell you that in 1980, that's where my wife and I were married, believe it or not. So it's the first time I've ever seen a picture of the hotel in which we got married at a Clyde River Steamer Club, wearing my curling top. So, without further ado, thank you so much. A lovely talk, and you've spent a lot of time and effort putting that together. So, a traditional round of applause. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you.